You're listening to Advancing Our Church. Welcome to Advancing Our Church, a Changing Our World podcast about Catholic stewardship, leadership, and advancement. And I'm your host, Jim Friend. Welcome back, everybody, and thanks for downloading our podcast today. We have a terrific show for you today on the topic of Catholic Schools Week. Now, since 1974, National Catholic Schools Week has been an annual celebration of Catholic education in the United States. It starts the last Sunday of January and runs all week, which this year is January 26th to February the 1st. Now, the theme for National Catholic Schools Week this year is Catholic Schools Learn, Serve, Lead, and Succeed. And today I'm replaying a panel discussion that took place last week during our webinar on Catholic Schools Week. I assembled two great panelists. First, Mr. Nick Regina, who is the president of Melbourne Central Catholic, and Jennifer Trefelner, who is the director of communications and social media strategy in the Diocese of Palm Beach. I'm sure you'll agree with me that these two bring a tremendous amount of experience to this conversation. It was actually a lot of fun. And so without further ado, here is Leveraging Catholic Schools Week. I have brought together a very compelling panel of very experienced experts here. I'd like to start off by introducing them and then just asking them to take a moment just to introduce themselves and to tell a bit about their experience. Why don't we start with Jennifer Trefelner. Jennifer, welcome to the webinar today. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim. Yes, I am the Director of Communications, Marketing, and Social Media for the Diocese of Palm Beach. I've been with our diocese for 16 years and in this role for a year and a half, and it is my pleasure to help orchestrate the communications that disseminate out of our office and help to coordinate the communications out of the diocese, as well as the marketing efforts and the social media. Active in helping Ncaa at their convention in any way I can through the MarCom committee. And happy to be here today.
Thanks, Jen. And Nick Regina. Nick and I have worked together before in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. Nick, great to be with you again. Welcome to the webinar, and thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome, Jim, and thank you. I'm Nick Regina. I'm currently the president of Melbourne Central Catholic High School in Melbourne, Florida. Prior to coming down here to Florida in July, I spent 5 years in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia as one of the deputy secretaries of education, where I oversaw enrollment and marketing for the high schools and the elementary schools. Prior to Philadelphia, I spent 6 years in the Diocese of Camden as their director for schools, did a little bit of consulting work in development and enrollment for Catholic schools, and prior to that, 23 years in a private Catholic high school in South Jersey, where my last 11 years I was the advancement director. So happy to be here with you. And by the way, like Jennifer, I also do some work for the marketing committee at Ncaa.
Well, thank you, Nick. And thank you both for being here. I think it's going to be a great discussion today. So let's just talk about today's agenda real quick so that we can let everybody who's listening know how we're going to conduct this. I'm just going to take a minute and talk real quick about changing our world and our work in Catholic education very quickly. And then we'll move quickly over to our panel discussion where we'll be posing some different questions for our panelists, and we'll have some roundtable discussion around those. Now, during that time, you are all those who are listening, welcome. You'll notice to join us in the conversation by typing in your questions, and we would love to hear from you, hear from your experiences, and answer any questions that you have. If you want us to go a little deeper on a particular topic, please pose a question, because I think that's what makes these kinds of conversations even more interesting and beneficial for everyone. And then we'll wrap up with any Q&A from anyone, any of the folks who are listening at the end of our webinar. Okay. So changing our world. Again, our webinar today is hosted by Changing Our World. We are a philanthropic fundraising public relations firm. We're based in New York, but we have offices around the country and actually around the world. We've very deeply committed to the Catholic education space. We were founded 20 years ago by our founder, Mike Hoffman. We are led by Brian Crimmins, who is our CEO, and Gavin Mooney, who is our president for client services. Many of you know Brian and Gavin from your work in fundraising and in education. We work with foundations. We work with Catholic schools. We work with Catholic parishes, and about 75% of our business is in the Catholic space. And so, as a firm, we're very committed to the work of Catholic education and to the work of the Church. Moving on to the next slide is just a representative list of some of our clients that you've seen, many of them kind of featuring our work in Catholic education, working not only at the school level, but certainly at the diocesan level around the country, and with several different Catholic education foundations that you can see they're represented on that list, not only in philanthropy, but also in the space of communications, not just through Changing Our World, but through our partner agency, the 100. So moving next, you'll see just a slide real quick here. Several years ago, and this was long before I joined the firm, I became aware of the CAP program, the Catholic Alumni Partnership Program, which partnered with several schools in the Archdiocese of New York, but has then but spread out around the country. What we've done with that program is quite phenomenal. It was hosted originally by Regis Philbin. Many of you may recall seeing Regis, who was a former Catholic school grad, talking about how sad it was that his elementary school had closed. That celebrity spark, along with several business folks around the country, sparked over $12 million that has been raised to date, which is tremendous for Catholic elementary schools. A lot of gifts. We've done wealth screening. We have done engagement programs. We've gotten schools up and running with their annual fund and begun alumni programs that didn't exist before, and formed a board of directors. And so it was really a way to kind of start heralding the spark of beginning a reformation and a revitalization of Catholic schools a lot in the Northeast area. So that program still exists, and we still work with several schools on it. And if there are elementary schools that are looking to dig into their database and find some of their lost donors or wealth screenings, we certainly have those services available still through the CAP program today. And then, of course, just a little shout out to our podcast. I host a weekly podcast called Advancing Our Church. We kicked it off back in June and published over 30 episodes to date, many of them on the topic of Catholic education. So if you'd like to visit our website at advancingourchurch.com and just click on Catholic education, you can scroll down and see some of the schools and foundations and leaders in Catholic education, including Jennifer Trefelner, who's with us today. We had a great conversation with Jen back in August about Catholic school marketing and data-driven enrollment management strategies. And so I would encourage you to subscribe. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, or Spotify, however you download your favorite podcast. That is a free service, and you'll see a lot of great leaders featured there. So now that we've offered that little introduction, I'd like to go ahead and turn back to our panelists now. We're going to start with the topic of communications. And, we all know that creating a strong communications plan is essential, maybe even certainly the first ingredient before looking for students, before looking for donors. But let me just throw it out to Jen and Nick. What are the benefits of a strong communications plan? And for those who are listening, what do you see as some of the most important ingredients of that plan?
I can take it to start there. One of the biggest benefits of a plan in place is clear and consistent messaging for our schools. What is the message that we are trying to give to those folks, potential customers who are out there? What is the value add? And a solid communications plan gives us a sense of consistency in what our messaging is. What's our communications calendar? A plan should include that. What are the different strategies we're going to use to communicate? Are we going to use, how will we use our website? How will we use social media? How will we use other areas to communicate the message? How will the plan should also kind of tell us how we're going to measure effectiveness. It defines who at the school does what and when. So basically it provides the framework, it provides the roadmap for how we're going to carry our message forward.
And I know, Nick, that in the past we've had lots of different samples that are available, and I'm sure that if anyone who's listening would like kind of a sample communications plan, we could certainly provide that to you. But I totally agree with what you're saying. A 12-month calendar, marketing is certainly around frequency, and so understanding the different audiences is so essential. Great points. So our next question, tell us a little bit about some of the generational trends that can impact a communications plan. Who would like to take that one?
Sure. I'll go ahead and take that one, Jim. This is a great question, and I think when you're designing your communications plan, you want to modify the language and that specific communication platform that you're going to use to best serve the demographic that you're trying to reach. My recommendation would be think about, what exactly your end goal is, and then back into the equation what generation you're going to reach and how they're using different platforms. For example, to reach parents of middle school or high school students who may be in Generation X, which are those born between 65 and 80, research is showing us that to reach this group, they're talking on Facebook, and you want to use a lot of data points. So, Gen Xers tend to be skeptical, and they want tangible results. And all these are kind of generalizations, but based on research, so that people are understanding exactly, what communication platform is best for them. When we look at boomers, for example, those that are born from 1946 to 64, those may be identified, for example, as donors or alumni of your school, grandparents. And, research is showing that they like emails. They're also on Facebook. However, they're less influenced by peer pressure, and they have a bigger picture perspective. So if you're looking at social media ambassadors, that may not have as much weight on the boomers. One generation, interesting generation, millennials, so those that are 22 to 38 years old approximately, they embrace the work smarter, not harder concept. Very savvy and also multitaskers. So knowing that information, you want to market to this group through, eye-catching Instagram stories or Instagram posts. You want to be direct with your marketing information because you know that they're multitasking most likely when they're reading your content. When we start talking about Generation Z, those born from 1997 on, you know that almost all of them have a smartphone. I think the latest stat was, 97% are using smartphones, and their average daily use is 3.5 hours. So they typically, are on that phone. They have a strong sense of social cause. They're very driven by doing the right thing and embracing multiculturalism as well. So for that generation, using a digital video platform would be great. Having a school-branded Snapchat filter if you're trying to reach that younger generation. So basically knowing what trends are imperative to address that different stakeholder group and creating programs and plans to reach each one of those different audiences.
Terrific. And Jen, would you recommend that if a school principal was putting together a marketing committee, it might even be good to have some representation from some of these different constituencies, right?
Absolutely. When I worked at a high school here on the Treasure Coast John Carroll High School, I worked there for 16 years as the director of institutional advancement. And one of the things that we implemented was a student, we called them a social media ambassador group. And we had a separate parent one. And those are two different generations that we're talking to, and they each had different ways of wanting to be communicated to. So absolutely, adding someone from each generation, onto a planning committee, I think is a great idea.
Wonderful. Well, good. Next question. What are some of the factors that administrators should keep in mind when marketing their school? And so in other words, what are the reasons that parents choose a Catholic education, do you both think, in 2020? It's interesting. There's a lot of debate and discussion around that, but what are some of your thoughts?
Those are two big questions, Jim. Perhaps, I'll start with the latter first. The reasons parents choose a Catholic education, and they are varied, but I think at the heart of choosing a Catholic education is the quality of the program. It's the way our customer is changing. Jen mentioned millennial. She mentioned Gen Xers. Gen Xers as being skeptical, tangible. Millennials marketing, to the group tech savvy, results oriented. So we have to kind of keep that in mind, that what our program is going to be the main driver to this customer that we're beginning to experience, cultivate, and the customer who is coming. Now, that doesn't mean that Catholic identity is an important part of what we do. Of course it is. That safety is an important part of what we do. But at the heart of it, It's the quality of the program and how investing in an education at one of our Catholic schools is going to benefit the child in the family. Jen, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I would definitely agree. I think, value-added programs as well now, looking at leadership opportunities for students, I think is another reason that people are choosing Catholic education now. Safety, security, and discipline, especially this day and age. And, definitely the quality of the academics, as well as, offering a wide variety of extracurricular programs too.
I think one of the challenges we have sometimes, because as Catholics, maybe we're humble and we're not used to bragging, but we have so many great stories to tell about the success of our Catholic school students, right? And so we need to be gathering those stories and touting our statistics. How many of our kids, what are our kids doing once they go beyond either elementary or high school? What colleges do they go to? What are some of the graduation rates? Could be really helpful.
Yeah, when you talk about factors that we should be considering as we think about marketing in our schools, it is very much about outcomes and the great outcomes that come from kids attending, Catholic schools. That's at the heart of things. When we talk about driving education decisions, never minimizing Catholic identity, but I'm going to really kind of overgeneralize here. We have a picture on the website. How do we get Catholic identity and program quality in that same picture? It's the kids around a microscope doing a science experiment with the crucifix on the wall in the background. There are ways of kind of sending different messages in one image, for example. But those factors, other things that keeping in mind as we think about marketing schools, what we put first, what we message, what is our budget for marketing. We all should have a little bit of dollars to market the message of the school, to market our mission. But not forgetting that within those marketing strategies, we should, with this customer that's with us now in particular, word of mouth is very powerful. So how do we engage word of mouth marketing strategies in what we do? How do we make sure the marketing messages that we have always include some sort of call to action? We want them to take a tour. We want them to shadow. We want them to come to open house. So calls to action should be part of what we should be keeping in mind when we think about marketing at the school. Maybe this is overly simplistic, but we can be whiz-bang marketers, but in a very real way. Who's answering the email or who's answering the phone at the school? What's that first line of interaction that a prospective parent has with us?
So important.
And so we have to think about that, as we think about marketing. Understanding that in a lot of cases we don't have robust marketing budgets. And also, as administrators, we should be thinking about how we engage volunteers in helping us. Jen, you mentioned social media ambassadors and parent ambassadors, so critical in our world, given that often we don't have a lot of resources.
Nick, I just want to pick up on one thing you just said, who picks up the phone? Just so critical. How hard is it for them to reach a person? Do they have to listen to 8 or 10 different menu items before they're able to push a button and just gets the help that they need? One diocese I worked in, we did a customer service day for all front desk administrative assistants, anybody actually who picked up the phone, and the teachers too, to understand the importance of not just marketing, getting a new kid in, but how do we retain students oftentimes has to do with how responsive our teachers are to inquiries from parents or emails. How often do they check their email? How quickly are we getting back to our parents? That customer service experience is just so paramount, I think, not only to getting new kids in the seat, but also retaining them once we have them.
A mindset shift in some ways that we are in a customer service business. And we always should be thinking about that. And that, customer service being part of how we think of marketing and messaging, what goes on at the school.
Absolutely. Good. Well, let's transition over to Catholic Schools Week. How do you both see Catholic Schools Week and how it fits in with the larger marketing plan of your school? Who would like to go next?
Sure. I'll start with this one. Catholic Schools Week is a great opportunity to market our schools, and I think we've discussed this, but effective marketing is essential for school success in today's competitive education environment. So there's more schools now for families to choose from. They're shopping more. So I think having the opportunities like Catholic Schools Week to highlight what you're doing is a wonderful opportunity to explore. And a school's success is dependent on year-round marketing programs. But celebrating Catholic Schools Week definitely allows you to examine some of those. And the National Catholic Education Association has a myriad of resources available that you can use through their different handbooks. But really, it concentrates on efforts to retain current students, attract and welcome new students, plus encourage a sense of pride among staff and also attract the very best educators. So as we're examining the marketing messages during this specific week and leading into it, really looking at how you're fostering community support to help drive fundraising efforts, and ensuring that your school is going to fulfill its mission by providing faith-filled and academically excellent education. The plans that are in place for Catholic Schools Week really should help you to communicate your strengths, drive enrollment, and do just that of proclaiming the good news of Catholic education. So really some wonderful opportunities to market your school during this week and fitting it into that bigger year-round marketing plan.
All great points, Jen. One of the common misconceptions that I've seen sometimes in work with schools is that when does the enrollment effort begin? And some schools wait until Catholic Schools Week, and others begin the first day of school. They know that we need to be marketing and recruiting and doing open houses and really beginning that process much earlier in the year. But Catholic Schools Week certainly has that opportunity to celebrate and to culminate, I think, for each parish and every high school and elementary school and middle school in that way. So great points.
If I could, Jim, one of the things Jennifer said that Catholic Schools Week is a great time for us in Catholic schools, but it also has to be really looked at as part of a larger marketing plan, and us getting to the point with what you just said too, also, which is this is a year-round effort. This is not something recruiting for the next year doesn't begin with Catholic Schools Week. It really begins. It's every day when we're running our schools. It's understanding. I don't know who our participants are, what geographically they are, but oftentimes waiting to do your open house if you're in the Northeast or the Midwest during Catholic Schools Week is kind of the worst time to do an open house for prospective families, because we could have a bunch of snow on the ground. It could have snowed a week ago and gotten dirty. Our schools don't look great in the winter in the Northeast or the Midwest all the time. So, understanding that it's a year-round effort. And also, I think with Catholic Schools, we don't missing the opportunity to preach to our current customers, remind them that they made a good choice investing in education at the school. So reminding them of the outcomes that are going on. If you're in elementary school, where the kids are going on to high school, what kind of scholarship dollars they've received. Connecting, if you're in elementary school, with the local high schools that you send kids to and find out where your graduates have gotten accepted to college. Beginning to really, toot your horn about the good work that's being done, and Catholic Schools Week gives us a good opportunity for that.
Great points. I know that we want to talk a little bit about Ncaa, and Ncaa, as we all know, offers a number of different resources on their website. Does anybody want to comments a little bit on what resources are available through Ncaa to promote Catholic Schools Week?
Sure. I believe this is the 46th year that National Catholic Schools Week will have this annual celebration. And you're right, it is traditionally held the last week in January. So this year, that's going to be January 26th to February 1. And to speak to Nick's point, absolutely, with the open houses in, the Northeast, I think one of the answers to that was the development of a second week to celebrate schools. And that has really just come about, recently in the past 2 years, and that's called Discover Catholic Schools Week. So that week was held this past year, November 17th to 23rd, and really designed to help schools connect with prospective families, donors, educators, etc. But you can find a downloadable marketing toolkit on NCAA's website. I know that we've used those in the past at a diocesan level, also at the Office of Catholic Schools level and a school level, where there's 36 pages of downloadable planning guides plus customizable material. So there's actually letters and forms and templates that you can download and then import your school's branding and logo right onto. So I would encourage you to take a look at that, for Catholic Schools Week and Discover Catholic Schools Week. And this year, the hashtag that's going to be used is hashtag CSW20 for Catholic Schools Week, and then 2020, so hashtag CSW20. And I think that's going to be a great way to network with other people on social media as well.
Wonderful. So what are some of the larger ways that you've seen Catholic schools promote themselves during Catholic Schools Week? Can anybody give any examples?
I'll jump in here, Jim. One of the things that I've seen from my experience in Camden and Philadelphia in particular is schools being very interactive with the parishes. And not just the host parish, but perhaps local parishes that don't have a school that do send kids. And it could be as simple as getting information into parish bulletins, to folks from the school actually having some speaking about their experience at the school during masses, either at the beginning of Catholic Schools Week or the end of Catholic Schools Week. A very effective strategy, especially if it's a host parish. The parish has the school. Is having an 8th grader, 7th grader, if it's a high school, 9th, 10th grader, get up at each Mass and thank all the parishioners for the money that they put in the collection basket, because they know part of that is helping the parish support the school. Good way to connect school and parish. You see that during Catholic Schools Week. Certainly beginning to see a lot more of social media to promote Catholic Schools Week. Whether it's Facebook or Instagram, to a smaller degree, Snapchat and Twitter, but using social channels to promote the different activities that happen at the school at Catholic Schools Week, to promote invitation to come and visit the school during Catholic Schools Week are a couple things that I've seen.
How about, is there a guide for parishes to participate in Catholic Schools Week, or suggestions that you have to include parishes?
There actually is, Jim. There is actually a liturgy and prayer guide that is in that marketing handbook that you can find online if you're an NCA member. And it does include things like personalized prayers for each day. It kind of elaborates on the specific day of celebration during Catholic Schools Week, which is that Sunday. The theme is Celebrate Your Parish. And it lists different ideas that you can use to acknowledge the day. Nick mentioned a few as far as, parish bulletin inserts in collaboration with your parishes. But also one of the things that you may want to do would be invite different local pastors to the school during the week that maybe, our regional pastors, they could come and visit the school, hosting different prayer services, devoting a special Mass to Catholic education, having the bishop come, things of that nature. But I definitely would recommend that liturgy and prayer guide, because it really provides wonderful examples of how you can make the most of that day.
And I think one of the misnomers is that you need a big budget, right, to make a big impact through marketing. But, maybe one of you can talk a little bit about how a school with a very small budget could make a big impact in marketing their school during Catholic Schools Week. I think sometimes folks get intimidated. They think, I don't have a big budget. My resources are limited. That's kind of the mantra for Catholic schools, and we all know that that's true. But any thoughts on how to, stretch those dollars and make a bigger impact during Catholic Schools Week?
Jim, I think part of that might go back to one of the things we talked about earlier, and that's engaging volunteers and the very import of word of mouth. So engaging our parents as ambassadors, creating what Jen talked about, social media ambassadors. very little money involved with getting volunteer help to present the message. Now, the key here, too, is we also want to give our ambassadors messages to promote. So remember that we do have a little bit of skin in that game, because we want them espousing what's going on at the school, the positive that's going on at the school. Limited budgets, social media, Facebook advertising, Google becomes fairly reasonable if you have a small budget. You can really target an audience that you want to get to. Jen, you could probably speak certainly more about that. Engaging our staff, the role of the staff in enrollment. Sometimes we overlook the fact that our teachers are a key part of marketing our school. Are they advocates for us?
Great point.
Do we work with them to remind them about how important they are and that they can carry the message out there, for us too? So just some thoughts there, Jen. I don't know if you want to jump in on that one.
Sure, absolutely. One of the things that our team has the pleasure of doing is kind of orchestrating the placement of ads on Instagram and Facebook for our Office of Catholic Schools here in the Diocese of Palm Beach. And I love to see the virality of the placement of these ads that we're able to pinpoint specific people that we want to reach. And you can vary that audience. But by, going ahead and budget, $100 a month even for some social media ads, I think, is definitely, you're going to have a great reach with that in educating your stakeholders that, you're going to be active on social media and for including them in the conversation, utilizing best practices when it comes to that two-way engagement on social media. I definitely think with a small budget, you can make a big impact.
Great point. Nick, earlier you mentioned parents and their role in marketing the school. How can administrators get teachers and parents ready, for their role? Because clearly this is not something that they think about every day, like we all do. But how do we get them ready to be those ambassadors for our school?
I think part of that, Jim, starts with us identifying some of those parents who are already advocates and engaging them to be kind of the leader of the parent ambassador program. And then when we have the occasion to meet with a parent, a back to school night at the beginning of the year, that we get our parent ambassadors to pitch the message of the importance of their help in a marketing effort for the school. For us as schools, it's constantly putting the results of the education of their kids. What's going on? And if we're in a high school, what's the college acceptance looking like for the class of 20? Where are we now? Class of 2020. What did it look like for the class of 2019? Our kids are engaged in all kinds of testing. So do we have any at the high school level merit scholars? At the elementary level, if we're using the Iowa tests or the Terra Novas, reporting back when they're done to families that what percent of our kids scored above the national average speaks a good story. So the more we provide good stories to our families, the more those good stories will filter their way out to the car line, and they'll filter their way out to the soccer field, and they'll filter their way out to the grocery store. Same way with our teachers. Are we reminding our teachers about the results of the education at the school? Do our teachers know what college acceptance is? Do our teachers know how many kids at the high school level were national merit scholars? Do our teachers know that, 5 of our 7 grades at elementary school tested above the national norm? How much information are we providing that teachers and parents can then take out and socialize?
Those are great points, Nick. And, as you're talking about how administrators can get their schools ready, both of you have worked at the diocesan level, or currently, Jen, work at the diocesan level. And Jen, you mentioned one example earlier, but, one question that I wanted to throw out to you, and this is just a little bit off the path here, but we have actually, just so you know, we have a couple of dioceses who have tuned in today to listen to our webinar, what do you see as the role of a diocese in Catholic Schools Week? How can we, as a diocesan entity, support what's happening in our local schools? How, when you talked about telling great stories, we have to find those great stories as administrators, right, in our schools, but working at the diocesan level to find those great stories, and then kind of shouting those from the rooftop, and making sure that everybody knows what great programs we have in our diocese. But any thoughts? What do you see as the diocesan role in marketing?
I think in two different levels. So one as a diocese, and the second as the Office of Catholic Schools with the diocese. There's a lot of opportunities to promote and support the schools. For example, having masses at the school and having bishop attend those masses and allowing that to be live streamed or promoted on social media, and including some of those tangible nuggets that talk about the successes of those schools, putting together an infographic that lists the different schools in the diocese and what some of those larger accomplishments are. I think that's very important. Being able to serve as a resource with how schools can promote Catholic Schools Week and that year-round marketing. For example, I emailed our schools with the information about Catholic School Choice Week and about Catholic Schools Week, and say this is where you can go to find those materials, helping them, advocating for them. And then what our schools do is they email our assistant superintendent and superintendent with what they are planning to do for Catholic Schools Week. And then we're able to write articles about that so we can promote that in our local paper, get media coverage. We're also doing this year for the first time a diocesan-wide volunteer day, which is going to be really nice. It's going to occur before Catholic Schools Week, but an opportunity for all of the faculty and staff at our schools to come together. They're doing a food packing event, but really kind of being strategic about promoting those schools, getting ads and bulletins, and providing those resources for the schools plus the parishes on promoting Catholic education as a whole. So there are a lot of opportunities for that, and plus an awareness that comes from Catholic Schools Week, and then hopefully into this year-round marketing campaign that the diocese can help with.
And the only thing I could add to what Jennifer said, which is great stuff, is I think part of our role from the diocese/Office of Catholic Schools is to be present. And so as an office, for example, during Catholic Schools Week, we always endeavored each day to be at one of our schools, just to be present at an activity going on at the school. I think it speaks volumes to the schools. It gives confidence that at the center we support what you do. Parents see people from the diocese. I think that's a very positive thing. Also, our job, I think, from a diocesan schools office level, is to be supportive and to be a resource, and to be a sounding board.
Terrific. Agree with everything you guys have said. One thing that we did, that I did when I worked at the diocesan level, we also came up with there was the Catholic schools theme, but we also came up with some kind of agreed upon strategies that we were going to try to weave into some of our individual strategies. For example, we had billboards around our diocese that talked about the graduation rates, and those billboards were kind of coordinated. Now, that's not necessarily a Catholic Schools Week activity, but a lot of the marketing that they did at the ground level, at the school level, we tried to mirror that from the diocesan level so that they complemented each other, and so that so the language that we were using, whether you're looking at School A or School B, was consistent. I know you did a lot of that in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, Nick, when we worked together. That branding, I think, is so important from the diocesan perspective, but a coordinated approach is so critical.
It sends a good message to the customer.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit again about some of the specifics of Catholic Schools Week. Is there a structure to the week that you would suggest for schools or dioceses to follow for Catholic Schools Week? Anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. There is, makes it a little easy. when you're mapping out your plan, consistently Ncaa has suggested making the Sunday, the start of Catholic Schools Week, a day to celebrate the parishes. And we spoke a little bit about that. Monday would be community or, a day of service. Tuesday would be talking about students, promoting the students. And that also lends itself to the day of giving, which we can circle back to later. Wednesday, talking about at a national level, Catholic Schools Week. And there's some downloadable snaps, with what they're called, their JPEG or PDF graphics that you can download off the website. And it speaks to the savings to the nation and some national statistics. And concentrating on those on Wednesday will kind of help make sure that is recognized. On Thursday, talking about vocations, you can work with your Office of Vocations on that for some collaboration. And Friday, celebrating faculty, staff, and volunteers if you're going to have a luncheon or a banquet, just to recognize them. And Saturday being a family day where you may want to have an open house, you could have a picnic, something just to celebrate those. And another resource that I find helpful is to actually create a Catholic Schools Week planning committee where you're going to have someone that's going to be point on that, a committee chairperson, and then you could have subcommittees, for example, for each one of those days, since those have themes. And then cultivate liaisons for different stakeholder groups. So you make sure you're not missing anyone, and then designate roles so that you have someone that's there to be a photographer, to post on social media, to make sure that you're recording the content, that is discussed, etc. So it is nice to have that framework and that structure as you're planning for Catholic Schools Week, and you're not missing, any specific stakeholder group.
Great. Thanks, Jen. We've talked a lot about digital marketing and social media. Have either of you seen some good digital marketing strategies around Catholic Schools Week?
Yeah, I think the most effective ones that I've seen, Jim, are those of one of the things we talked about earlier again, that call to action. Whether it's a Facebook event for what's going on, Tuesday at school with students. The call to action just is at the heart, I think, of the marketing that we need to do. It's all well and good to say, we're a great school, but it's better to say we're a great school. Come and see us at Student Day on Tuesday. And so the most effective strategies I've seen, digital strategies, are those kinds of strategies that have a call to action in them. That you take a simple Facebook post and boost it, which doesn't cost a lot of money. And we've seen schools have increased attendance at events because they've done that. And then they've gotten their social media ambassadors to put it on their pages. And then so that boosts the scope of things. Just a couple thoughts there.
No, great thoughts. What are your thoughts, either Nick or Jen, about more traditional approaches, like bulletin inserts, purchasing ads, radio, TV, that kind of thing?
I definitely think the bulletin inserts is a great idea. We work closely with our parishes and teaching best practices and communication strategies. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to use that, to get that into the bulletin. And a lot of parishes now, too, they also have, PowerPoint projectors where they're running announcements before Mass, where you can, put information in there. One of our local papers, does a section on Catholic Schools Week, and we're able to tout some of the accomplishments there. And absolutely, if budget allows for TV or radio ads, then, that's great. We had 2 schools work together this past year to do a billboard on the side of the road as a way to, increase, information about, spread the word about who they are and where they're located. So there's always great marketing options out there and different strategies. I think it depends on, your team. Do you have the time to do it, and also your budget?
If you have the budget, moving in ways like radio or TV, definitely something to consider. But also keep in mind that you can't just run, 2 ads on television the week before. There's got to be a significant number of ads on both TV and radio for it to have impact. So as long as the budget's there, good to go.
Yeah, frequency is key with those kinds of things. Absolutely. I've seen Discover Catholic Schools Week. How is that different from Catholic Schools Week?
Sure. As I mentioned kind of earlier, alluded to it. So Discover Catholic Schools Week is newer. And, this year was held in November. And, I think the opportunity that we have here is that there's two different weeks where you can really start talking about your Catholic schools. You can choose to participate in one or both, and depending on where you are geographically, as you mentioned, having an open house the last week of January may not be ideal. So November could be a good time. I like this concept because I think the weeks build upon themselves. So you're starting to lay the groundwork in November by Discover Catholic Schools Week. And you could modify that to be designed more to help schools connect with prospective families and donors and educators. So it's earlier in the school year, and you could do it as an informative session, informative week, to talk about the benefits of your specific school and Catholic schools as a whole. And then for Catholic Schools Week, it's been around for the past 45 or so years. So, people are used to that week. It's definitely, gets traction throughout the United States, and utilizing the tools that are available for that week as well. And just being a part of the conversation, I think is helpful. So, I would encourage folks to participate in both weeks if they're able. If not, pick one or the other.
Great. Thanks, Jen. So with the remaining time we have here in the hour, I'd like to switch our focus a little bit towards philanthropy. I've heard that there is a day of giving at the national level. Can either one of you describe what that is all about?
Sure. I would be happy to do that. So the National Day of Giving is sponsored by Ncaa and also by FACTS. And the specific date of that is it's January 28th through the 29th. And this is going to be the third annual Day of Giving, titled Many Gifts, One Nation, a Day of Giving to Catholic Schools. To participate, all you have to do is fill out an opt-in form for access, and FACTS will help you create your own customized giving page. And it's just a great opportunity for advancement or development folks, marketing, or your business office to be sure they have immediate access to these school pages. Yeah, I was looking at the statistics from last year, and the Day of Giving was, wildly successful. More than $1 million was raised. There were more than 6,000 total gifts, and I believe that came from a total of 427 schools from 113 dioceses throughout the United States. So, being a part of this and being a part of that conversation for Day of Giving, there's a lot of free resources that are available. The hashtag that's being used for that is hashtag many gifts, CAF, CATH, ed. So you can customize your appeal for Day of Giving with photos and logos and content. You can also manually add cash and check donations to that to be reflected in the National Day of Giving so that these statistics are accurate for the following year. But it also provides the opportunity to gather donor profile information, and I think that's critical, and you guys would agree with that. But just the opportunity to encourage people to give and to be a part of this, Many Gifts, One Nation, a Day of Giving to Catholic Schools, and really to see that continue to increase with more schools participating for more dioceses, and raise that bottom line from $1 million on into the future.
Terrific. Thank you, Jen. More specifically for our schools that are listening and even our dioceses, any thoughts on how a development director or a school administrator should be considering engaging their constituents, their donors, around Catholic Schools Week? Any thoughts?
Well, one is just to kind of follow up on Jen's great description of the Day of Giving. It's a great opportunity for schools to not have to do a heavy lift and really take advantage of the resource that's being provided there in the Day of Giving. In particular, if we have schools, who are with us today that, you don't have, if you're an elementary school, you probably don't have a development director or an advancement director who's managing fundraising. at the school. So it's a great way to kind of jump into really the beginnings of an annual fund for a school, which I think the three of us would probably all advocate is, from a philanthropic direction, we should all be moving in that direction,
Sure.
Relationship rather than transactional fundraising. But engaging in that, I think, is an easy piece of the pie. And remembering that even Catholic Schools Week is just part, much like in marketing, Catholic Schools Week is just part of, if you have an overall development program, it should be part of the, what goes on during Catholic Schools Week is really, part and parcel of what you've done prior to that. If you do have an annual fund program, how did your lead gift program get off the ground back in September? Did you do a fall mailing? Did you do a holiday mailing? Are you doing a catch-up mailing with folks who gave last year or some year that live month, side month mailing? So how does it fit within the overall fabric of the development at the school? But how can we engage the constituents? You use the platforms that we have to tell them what's going on. Never lose sight of whether it's we're trying to cultivate a potential family for the school or we're trying to cultivate a donor. It's about outcomes. And so are we good at reporting back what philanthropy has done for the school? How effective do we communicate that gifts given last year helped us do this year, or gifts given so far this year have helped us do this? Always making a tangible relationship between the investment that somebody made and the outcome of that investment. Catholic Schools Week is a good opportunity to kind of summarize what's going on so far in the course of a year, and that could lead to more giving down the line.
Great points, Nick. I'll just piggybacking off a little bit of what you described there. I think, my own, when I was on the board of my own kids' elementary school, we kicked off our lead gift event in the fall. And then it was around Catholic Schools Week, actually shortly afterwards, which we did kind of the general phase, if you will. Maybe it wasn't the most ideal timeline, but it was effective in that people already were thinking about Catholic schools. We just come off of, it was top of mind in their minds over the last week of a Catholic Schools Week. So I was the one who gave kind of the inaugural address and went out and spoke at all the masses and just said, yes, this is a treasure we have here in our parish, and we'd invite you to participate, to support it, and to make sure that Catholic education is alive here in our community. Some of the other ways I've seen schools do it is, you look at your board, if you have a board, or if you have significant donors that you're top of mind, that could come and describe, their journey, or if they're an alum who can talk about the great benefit that their alma mater has been for them, to talk at Catholic Schools Week. Oftentimes we invite a current family to talk at the masses at Catholic Schools Sunday, but how about an alum, who's been on a journey, where your school played a pivotal role in their life. And so there is an opportunity for, personal testimonies, or, kind of a shining example. I remember, before, when my wife and I were thinking about a Catholic education for our kids, which elementary school we're going to send them to, I remember attending an event where I saw a young man from Villanova who was a double major in chemistry and biology. He was a phenomenal superstar. But I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I would love for my kid to be that kid in 15, 18 years. He had talked about the foundation he received as a graduate of Catholic school and the great things that he was doing today. And it wasn't him bragging as much about himself as it was thanking his school for the great education that they received. So I think it's a great opportunity to allow our donors to tell their story and be the advocates that they want to be for us, and put them in the position to be those advocates for us. So I think that's the one of the great byproducts of engaging your alums and your donors and your friends. There's just a couple minutes left here, and I have a couple of questions that have come in from the audience. And so I just want to go ahead and throw that out there. How can you use Catholic Schools Week as an example of year-round marketing to set your school or diocese up for success in terms of creating a solid development plan? Anybody?
Sure, I'll take that one. First I would look at developing, for your development plan, look at your marketing and development structure. And I would start by gathering research and input, looking at your end goals and what do you want to happen. Once you've determined your goals, then kind of developing your message and identifying what you want that to be. And then coming up with your strategy and your tactics. We do a lot with creating objectives and making sure they're smart. So, specific and measurable. They're time sensitive. And then last, evaluating your progress. So did it work and did it not work? If it didn't, how can you modify it for the future? So coming up with different ways, for your development plan to be really solid and using a template, such as that, or, the RPIE structure, research, planning, implementation, and evaluation, to come up with a good plan, I think is ideal.
Wonderful. And what advice would you give to a principal to help create a culture of philanthropy during Catholic Schools Week throughout the year? Anybody?
We don't necessarily overlook, but we forget to do it enough, and that's say thank you.
Great point.
Remembering that the road to the next gift is often how well we thank the donor for the gift that just came. Being grateful, that culture of gratefulness, I think, is important. Say thank you. Create that culture where that thank you is connected directly to, because you did this, we were able to do this. So that might be at the heart a simple start, Jim. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got just a couple minutes left here in the hour, and I just want to thank you both for being on our program today. We have a couple of questions that came in during the course of our conversation. Let's see if we can get to them. First of all, I mentioned earlier in the program that we do have some sample marketing calendars and samples, and we would be happy to send those out to anybody who's interested. We did get a question here. Do you know of any dioceses succeeding in areas with free charter school programs? And what are they doing to win? So charter schools obviously can be a big challenge for Catholic schools. And one of the things that I have seen schools do is just talk about their legacy. And many charter schools are new on the block, and that our Catholic schools have a long history of providing a quality academic education and quality academic programs to our families. And so I think strengthening that legacy and that programming, we're not going to win on a cost when you're dealing with free. That's true for public, and I think that's true for charter schools. But we have to win on the quality, I believe, of our Catholic schools, and I think that's where we need that's the realm in which we need to play. Do either of you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would also say to talk about the Catholic identity that our schools provide, and teaching morality, and teaching kids to be the best versions of themselves. So really kind of at a young age, making sure that we're instilling in them the values that they're going to need for the rest of their lives in community service and philanthropy, thinking of others, those traits and those qualities that, we want our kids to have as adults. I agree with you about the legacy as well. And then, not only the Catholic identity part, but also the value added. So making sure that the community knows how much your Catholic school has to offer.
Jim, I'll just say one thing. In Philadelphia, we said we were equipping saints for life in this world and the next. And so it is about making better people.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So last question, and we've talked a lot about a number of different kinds of events, but what are some of the innovative events or best practices that you have seen be successful? And this person wasn't specific whether it was around philanthropy or around marketing, but to either of you or to both of you, what any that we haven't talked about today that you want to talk about or highlight?
Sure. As it pertains to, things to do during Catholic Schools Week, I think that, being able to be involved with policymakers in your area, innovative events, inviting some of your government officials to your campus, having an open house just for them. We also used to do a pastor and principal visit where we invited area principals. I worked at a high school. We invited area principals to the school, as well as pastors, not just Catholic priests, but other pastors and then business leaders. So, having a day where they had tours of the school, we fed them, and we educated them about, everything that our Catholic education had to offer. So I think that's a little bit of a creative, perhaps innovative event where, it's an opportunity for you to sell your school and to educate the community that you may not, reach otherwise without, planning for it ahead of time.
And Jim, I've seen a couple schools in my past who invited realtors during this week.
Nice.
And engaged realtors in, showing them the school, because obviously they're often the first people that talk to a prospective family moving into the area.
Wonderful. And I'll just chime in kind of with a closing thought. I think, and maybe this comment kind of goes across the board for everything we've talked about today. I would say, don't undercut yourself. Shoot for the stars. Quick little story when at our parish school, the one I served on the board at, we didn't think of ourselves as a gala school in the past, the kind of school that could raise money through a formal dinner or dinner dance. We were maybe a little bit more of a beef and beer school. And that's the way it had been for many years. We decided that we were going to throw a formal gala, and we were going to charge $75 a plate. We were going to have an auction, just like a lot of the other schools did. We got a little pushback at first. Is that the right plan for us? Are we that kind of school? Do we think we could achieve those kinds of numbers? Do we think people will buy the tickets and actually come? I think was the bottom line. And we were very successful with that. And that gala is probably going to its 7th or 8th year now. And has now become kind of a mainstay for the budget and raises, I think over $25,000 a year, which for an elementary school, we were pretty proud of. An elementary school with just 300 kids, in not a, it's not a super, it's a great area, but it's not the rich part of town, if you know what I mean. And it's serves a middle class community that is working hard, and it became the opportunity of the year for us to celebrate who we were as a school, the impact we made in the community, and dress up a little bit and celebrate our success. So I guess my closing thought would be just, don't underestimate yourself, don't underestimate your community, and shoot for the stars. Jen and Nick, let me throw over to both of you. Any closing thoughts for our conversation today?
I just want to thank you so much for having us on. I think this is an important topic, marketing, enrollment, and philanthropy for our Catholic schools. I'm looking forward to Catholic Schools Week this year and seeing the great things that our schools will be doing. I think being strategic in your planning, being well organized, being a resource and support for those that need it most is key and valuable. And I hope that some of the things that we said today will help those that are listening.
And for me, many thanks for being with you today. And we should always remember we're doing good work, and we have to make sure that this Catholic education thing keeps going, because it's so important to so many people.
Nick, Jen, thank you so much for being on our webinar today, for all your prep and everything that went into getting ready for the day. I really do appreciate it. You're both wonderful professionals doing incredible work for God and for the church. So thank you so much to both of you. And for all of our listeners, everybody who have participated, thank you so much. We will send you all a copy of this webinar. And we were happy, again, to answer any questions that you have or offer any samples that we have available. And Jen, Nick, real quick, you want to tell folks where they can get in touch with you if they have any questions for you specifically?
Sure. My email address here in the Diocese of Palm Beach is the first initial of my name, J, followed by my last name, Trefelner, Trefelner, at diocesepb.org. That's Diocese, P for Palm, B for Beach.org. I'm happy to answer any questions if you send me an email.
Great.
And I'm Nick Regina. My email here at Melbourne Central Catholic High School is Regina, Regina, at melbournecc.org.
Thanks again, folks. Thanks for coming. We appreciate all your support. We encourage you to listen to Advancing Our Church, our podcast, delivered every Monday on iTunes and Stitcher and wherever you download your favorite podcast. So again, thank you to our panelists, and thanks to you all, and good luck and God's blessings during this Catholic Schools Week. Thank you. I want to thank Nick and Jen for being on our show this week. For more information, and if you'd like to download the full webinar or PowerPoint, just visit our show notes, and I'll leave Nick and Jen's contact info there as well. Well, that's our show this week. Many thanks to the Changing Our World podcast team and to Podastery Studios for their support of our show. If you'd like more information about our show, please visit us at advancingourchurch.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Advancing Our Church is a production of Changing Our World, a fundraising and social impact consulting firm which has been advising both nonprofits and corporations for the past 20 years. For more information, please visit us at changingourworld.com. Well, that's it from me, everybody. Have a terrific week, take care, and God bless.